another amazing woman because we are celebrating International Women's History Month. And I probably said that wrong again, so we're just going to keep saying the month that is about us because women run the world, okay? That's what we got to remember. But I am Nara here at the director's desk, and I have with me Lynette. And Lynette is an amazing individual. You all forgot that we had to do the interview because the conversation got good before the interview started. But I want her to be able to tell you all everything. So tell us, Lynette, who are you?
Well, hey, Peoria Live. Hey, nice to meet you. I'm happy to be here. Didn't expect such a fun time already. My name is Lynette Fernandez. I'm an instructor at Bradley, and I teach game programming. That's who I am right now. And it's really cool, and I really like it, but I wasn't always in academia. In fact, I only became an instructor about 6 months ago.
Oh.
And so it's kind of new, and 6 months ago, and I moved to Peoria for that job from Seattle. And
wow.
It was a wonderful thing. And in Seattle, and mostly on the West Coast, I made casino slot machine games for 12 years, and I really liked it. It really was a lot of fun. I don't gamble, but I'm a good programmer, and I loved my job. And I'm a big believer, if you don't love your job, if you don't love what you do, don't do it.
That's true.
There are means that I know we have to make ends meet, bills to pay, but if you can afford not to do what you're doing, if you don't love it, I would say find something you love and do it.
I agree. So, video programming,
Yeah.
game programming. How did this come about? Because I see your personality, geez, and it's bubbly, especially I love the hats.
Thank you.
So, game programming, that has to be the funnest thing in the world to do for a living.
It absolutely is. I mean, it can be stressful. And the video game industry, the whole game industry is actually bigger than most other industries combined. And, you know, it's branching out. It's from when you can start earlier on with your little kids' toys and little press this button. What does the cow say? But they'll start with, and then you can go as far as, you know, if you have your Call of Duty and all your other big games. But for me, my journey started when I accidentally got into programming because I wanted to be a lawyer, got pneumonia for 6 months, couldn't go to law schools. And then I took programming because computers were new, it was up and coming, why not? And in the year that I was there, I was exceptionally good at programming and not struggling at all. It came really easy to me. Personally, it's because I think I'm a very logical person and it just clicked. And even after a year, I was about to still leave and go to law. But all my professors and my parents and my family, they were just like, you're good at this. Why are you leaving? You've easily gotten straight A's. Like, why are you leaving? So I was like, all right, fine. Maybe I'll stick with it. And in the next couple of years, my math professor and my programming professor, they came together. And they combined sort of our classes on a level where we needed to use the math formulas that we learned in code to make games. And I was like, wait, you can make games out of these things? This is incredible. That was where I was like, this is what I want to do for a living. I want to make games.
Wow.
And so this was in India, and I did my undergrad in programming, and then I wanted to do my master's in game programming and game design specifically because I can specialize in that.
Right.
That's what brought me to the U.S. So in 2006, I moved to the U.S. to do my master's in games, and then I got a job working in the slot machine industry for 12 years.
And this was there the whole time.
Yeah.
How was that to go from being in India, where you were born, raised, all of your family and culture, coming to a new country, not just a new state, you came to a whole new country?
Well, I think I failed to mention that I grew up in Hong Kong. And so my family's always traveled. So I moved when I was born in India, and then first couple of years of my life in Abu Dhabi in UAE. And then we spent 10 years in Hong Kong. And we moved because Dad worked for an Italian bank, and Hong Kong was like the finance capital of the world at the time. And so we moved. So I already had like a bit of an international education. And then, you know, history, China took Hong Kong back, things were changing. So we came back to India. I was freaking out because I was like, I only speak English. And it was the whole thing. But, you know, what's funny is, I mean, we all know everybody in India speaks English, and it's fine. So we came back to India, and that's where I finished my school and did my undergrad. And so for me, change is something that I just desire.
Wow.
The one thing that was, I moved from a very tropical place in India to upstate New York to do my master's. And that was my first experience of 5 feet of snow.
But you had
And
never seen it, really?
no,
Wow.
no. And the world keeps going. There's snow plows. And I was like, this is fantastic. Like, the world keeps going. You just learn to like wake up earlier and heat your car up, take snow off your car. And there were a lot of learning experiences, but overall, I would say the lifestyle is definitely, I like it here.
Wow, it's funny you mentioned the snow. It's funny you mentioned the snow, but unfortunately, when we had that last bad snowstorm and the kids still had to go to school, it was some teachers at one of the schools, all from India,
Okay.
had never had to experience the snow before because school is usually canceled. And even after spinning out and having to wait for the tow truck to come, they were still determined to make it to school to educate these students.
Oh,
Like they were determined, and I'm like, those are the type of educators we need.
yes.
Right there.
Yes.
That are dedicated and serious. But I'm still like, no, I would have went home and said, go find some substitute teachers. Yes, District 150. I would not have went to work. I would have said, I'm sorry, it's a virtual learning day. I just freaked myself out on Western.
Oh my gosh,
So,
yeah.
It's just, and you said 6 months ago is when you got into the education side of everything.
So last year, my company made a change and they were taking all the production of games back to South Korea. So they were like, hey, we're stopping production here. And I was like, okay, well, it kind of was like the kick in the pants that I needed because I was getting way too comfortable. Programming was getting way too easy. I was in 3 hours, I was done with my day's work because it wasn't challenging enough. And I knew I wanted more. But in the pandemic, we're not really motivated to do more. And so this was the whole, hey, I was like, here's where I can start interviewing. And so I extensively started interviewing. And my interview process is a whole nother conversation. But you know how you mentioned, like, you like my style and my hats? I realized that my personality, just interviewing for a regular programmer's job in a mostly white man's world, is actually very difficult.
Yes, because you're bold and I like it.
Yeah, and I think I intimidated a lot of managers and other people that I talked to. There was actually a manager that asked me, have you been a manager before? And I said, no, but I would like to. And I never got that job, and I think I know why. It's one of those where I know I'm coming off strong. And I interviewed with primarily only white straight men. That's who I interviewed with. And over time, I was like, I think they don't like my personality. Because if you think of like female programmer, you either think goth or you go to like sweatshirt, hoodie, ponytail. This is not it.
No, you have some fashion sense. It's
so
nice.
it was kind of hard, and so I personally I don't own a hoodie. So I was like, okay. I borrowed a hoodie from a friend. I didn't wear the hat. I put my hair up. Didn't wear my earrings. I started to change my personality because I had to interview and I needed to fit into. I'm like, what about whatever they built in? That way they're not as intimidated by me. And it was getting harder and harder. I was actually, honestly, I was getting more callbacks after I had toned down who I was, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
It was
my whole facial expression just changed.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard. But, I had updated my LinkedIn profile, so I was also getting recruiters on there. And Bradley University reached out to me on LinkedIn, and they were like, hey, do you want to be your professor? And I said, I don't know. What does this entail?
Right.
I've never thought about this. I just assumed I'm a programmer. I should be a programmer.
Right.
And he said, okay, let's talk. We set up a meeting the next day to chat. And I was chatting with the chairperson of the department, Ethan Ham, and he's really nice. And he told me everything it involves. And I said, okay, I'll start this interview process. And as I did the interview process, one piece of the interview is you need to teach a class. So it was over Zoom still because I was still in Seattle. And I taught this class and I gave a topic and we talked. We went back and forth, shared my screen, did code. And the one thing I realized is my personality works for this. because when they're copying code, when they're trying to compile, when they're running programs, you need somebody to talk in the background. You're constantly explaining what the code does. You're constantly saying where you can use it. I talk a lot. This worked for me.
Wow.
It was just amazing fit. I said, I can do this. And I had so much fun teaching that class just as an interview. I didn't realize that I was like, I'm comfortable with this. I was surprised I wasn't nervous because I hadn't really taught before.
Right.
You know, I've trained people in my department and things like that, but this was fantastic. And the hiring committee came back with the feedback they gave me was they liked my teaching style and that it was very illuminating. And I thought that word was fantastic. I said, I don't think I've ever been told I'm illuminating. I really like that. And I just went through and I got the job and I was like, this is great. And, you know, told my friends and family, I'm like, I'm moving to Peoria. This was also the first time I heard of Peoria. And I was like, because I'd never been to the Midwest.
Wow, because you went from, like you said,
upstate New York to the West Coast.
Yeah, so no in between. No Midwest.
Nothing in between. And I was like, well, you know, I like adventure. I like change. I think I need change to survive. And so in Seattle, I didn't have a car, but I knew I probably would need one in the Midwest. So bought a car, drove here. So I got to Peoria July 1st, and classes started, I think, August 25th. And I've been really happy with it.
Wow.
Just no regrets.
Oh, that is amazing. That is a big journey.
It is.
What you're used to. So how is it being in Peoria? Probably learning most of the things to go eat and hang out is probably from colleagues and students. So I could just imagine the things that you've got a chance to experience.
Oh my gosh. So for me, I think I mentioned this before, but Peoria is the smallest place I've ever lived. You know, I've lived in Hong Kong, big city. India, obviously, is 1.3 billion people there. There's always some. And then even like, you know, the town, upstate New York, Reno, Seattle, and now here, this was the smallest place. But I was like, okay, what's there to do? So I started Googling, and I realized there wasn't a lot on. Discover Peoria shows up first. And so there wasn't a lot on there yet. And then later on, I learned it's because it kind of died down with populating events because of the pandemic, because everything was closed. But I'm never afraid to go out by myself and go to places. So I would just drive around and see what's open right now and figure out places. And that way, in the summer last year, I went to the chili cook-off, which was really good. And I just learned from going to places. And I would go to a lot of meetups. I joined Meetup and went to a lot of meetups. And there is so much to do in Peoria that people don't even realize. Apart from the events that come at the Civic Center and things like that, but trivia is huge here, I've realized. And
I noticed that.
Yeah.
Did you go to the St. Jude's trivia night a couple of weekends ago?
No?
Yep.
See?
I didn't get a chance to go because I had just found out about it about the day before. But when they do it's the event they do from like Memphis to Peoria. And they did a trivia night. And I'm like, oh, that would have been so fun to go to. So.
Yeah.
You gotta catch you next year.
Absolutely. I'm in. Count me in. It's just so, and then there's a lot of karaoke everywhere in town. And I was like, this is fun. And I found a place that does bingo. And it's at the bar and you have food and drink. And you know, I'm like, this is great. Yeah. And it's actually at Oliver's in the Heights.
Wow.
Which is one of my favorite places for food. Man, their pizza, I don't know what they do to their pizza, but it's addicting. It's
I'm
good.
coming there. Oliver's, I am coming in. Good. Because, wow.
But, you know, and so I kept making more friends because I'm like, why not? You know, go out there. I have no issues talking to random people I meet. And one of the things that I love about Peoria is the people. And it's kind of interesting because my little story of when I moved here, my movers took 2 months to get my things here. So for 2 months, I didn't have anything. I got here July 1st. My stuff got here September 1st. So I needed to buy clothes for the first day of class because most of my clothes were with my stuff. So I went to the JCPenney, got a couple of dresses, and the woman at the counter, she was really nice. And she said, you know, these are some nice dresses. You got an event coming up? And I told her briefly, I'm like, no, my stuff's missing. And she said, oh, I was like, I said, I just moved here. And so she started talking to me and telling me things.
Wow.
And I was like, I felt bad because I'm like, I thought I was prolonging this interaction and there were people waiting in line.
Mhm.
So I turned around and I said, hey, I'm so sorry that I'm taking up your time. And they were like, oh, no, you're new. We'll tell you where to go too. And I was like,
isn't that great?
it is great. Nobody was bothered by this. And, in Seattle's a very nice town, but it's also a go, go, go place.
Mhm.
Like, if you do not know your Starbucks order by the time you come up in the front, you're going to get stares, And so at this point, this was new for me. I'm like, wait, we're all
Yeah.
talking? You're all really nice. And that was like one of my first encounters of just the people of Peoria. And I was like, okay. And the more I went out, the more people are like, all right, tell us your story. Oh, do this, do that. And I was like,
Mhm.
they just love to take time to get to know you, and it's genuine. That's what I
Yes.
appreciate about it. It's not a, hey, we're making small talk.
Nope.
I like the people of Peoria.
I always tell people, because I moved here in June to be 5 years. I came from Flint, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And I was scared at first. I didn't go anywhere.
Oh, really?
And then individuals had to pull me out of it. It was like, no, you're going to be fine. I haven't had a bad encounter yet with anyone. And I'm like, I know what they say is bad things happen everywhere you go.
Yeah.
But when you're new in a place, you can stay away from anything that might be bad. Because
That's
you meet
true.
all the great people. The ones
That is
talk
true.
to you. So we've talked about your big move here.
Mhm.
Let's talk your course. How is
Yeah.
it when you interacted with the kids? And they're probably like,
They don't
This is
believe
our-
that I'm old.
like, that's the first thing they're like, wait a minute, she's down to earth and she's fun. I'm sure that your class is probably the one everyone signs up for.
Well, they have to. It's I teach all freshmen. So
Oh, wow.
they have to sign up. It's their first step so at Bradley, it's the
Mhm.
interactive media department.
Okay.
And I teach game programming, and it's usually a lot of intro. In our first semester, last year was my semester teaching. It's here's a bunch of tools, here's a bunch of snippets of code, and here's what these code pieces do. Let's work towards making a game. And so that way their first semester is more, can you work with little pieces of code? Can you build a game together? And I'm going to tell you, some of these students made such amazing games. I'm glad I'm not going to compete with them when they're ready to get out. And but it's just, they're wonderful. Some of my students are just exceptional, and I'm like, this is really cool. And
wow.
I loved connecting with them. I asked them questions. I was like, you don't have to call me professor. I don't demand respect. I was like, I know you respect me, but we can talk. And
that's bigger respect right there.
Yeah.
This is someone I can really come to.
Mhm.
And that's going to get it. Like,
and more often than not, I keep telling my students, I'm like, I have an open door in my office.
mm-hmm.
And I've actually had a lot of students to just come and just chill and vent. And I think I'm glad that they see me as a person that they can talk to about anything.
Yeah.
And so they've just come and hung out, or they'll, in my office hours, they'll just hang out and be like, all right, so what new code thing are we talking about? I was like, oh, we're just talking. Okay, great. It's fantastic. And I just had a meeting with my boss, because every 2 weeks we have a meeting with my boss. And, he was like, how's it going? I'm like, I love Peoria. I love my job. I'm getting involved in the community. I have no complaints. I really have no complaints right now. And he was like, fantastic. I'm like, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, college life. The freshmen, they're probably nervous. It's their first time. Some of them with the pandemic, first
Yeah.
time being back in school.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on where they're from. How was that transition to make them know it's going to be okay? It's your first
was
year.
hard.
You can do this.
So one thing I had to acknowledge last semester was, yes, this was my first time teaching. So I have my own hurdles of,
Mm-hmm.
pacing myself, planning a class, teaching it. But what I had to recognize was these kids graduated high school in the pandemic.
Yeah.
And, then they came to environment, and briefly, when the pandemic started, we're all social beings. And so we were hurting because we couldn't see each other. We couldn't go out. And then over 2 years, we're like, all right, this is our life. Fine.
Yeah, we got used to being lonely.
Alone, yeah.
Yeah.
And then now, when things started opening up again at that time and people were coming back out, there was the nervousness and the anxiety of oh my gosh, now I have to learn how to be with people again
Mhm.
and interact. So there were a lot of people that, a lot of my students that were having that issue with trying to be social and then keeping up with classes because they had gotten used to the online classes and how that was. And This is a shout out to every educator out there that ever did the online classes. More power to you. To keep a class engaged online, I think is very difficult. I've had to do it one day this past semester because of the snow. And I was like, this is kind of hard. And every educator out there who did this, my gosh, more power to you. Like, that's an amazing feat.
Yes.
Because keeping kids engaged from in a classroom is hard enough. And then outside the classroom,
it's even harder.
Even harder. Yeah, it was amazing. But so that was the first thing I had to realize. These kids coming back, there were so many hurdles that they had, and also pressures of college itself. You know, it's hard. College is hard. All of a sudden, your workload increases. All of a sudden, you have to be involved with, because one thing I love about Bradley, and the more I learn about Bradley, the more I'm in love with Bradley. It's just, it's fantastic because they make their students complete individuals. They have classes of not just their specialized major, but a lot of other ones. Like for us, they take English classes, psychology, biology, some of these, you know, and like history and things like that to make you a more well-rounded person and not just your specialized person. So I really love that Bradley has that included. But yeah, that being said, so these kids come here and they're like, oh, we want to make games. And then they're like, we don't get to play as much games. I'm like, no, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work that goes into making games, and there's a lot of homework. And it was challenging for us. It was challenging for me. It was challenging for them. But like I said, I told them, I'm like, you need to talk, you can come to me. And Bradley has got counseling services on campus, and that was really nice. So I said, hey, if you don't feel comfortable talking to me or a friend, reach out.
Exactly.
Don't sit by yourself. Talking to a stranger, you know, whatever, it might help. Or yoga. So I was a big advocate of their mental health, which is really important. I said, yeah, you should, if you're not mentally here, you're not going to accomplish anything. So.
You are so right. So we've talked about your move, these kids, your job, and the last interview I did, something that stood out to me that I said I'm going to use all the time. You just told me all of these great things about you. But who is Lynette? Like, who are you? Like, if you could be anything you want to be in the world, well, we know you love your career.
Yeah.
But if you could be anything that you wanted people to know you for, what would be 3 words that you would say describe just Lynette?
I would 3 words. That's kind of you're asking a talker to come down to 3 words.
Yes, I know it's gonna be really hard.
Yeah, that's kind of hard. I would say I'm very positive. I would definitely say if I'm going to give myself 3 adjectives that define me, it'd be positive, energetic. I have way too much energy for anybody else, which is why I keep things going. Why I need so many things to be involved in to keep me going. And let's see, I would, what else would I mean, definitely positive, definitely energetic. And I'm a people person.
I would totally agree. And if we have to say a 4th word in the words of Mr. Ethan or Dr. Ethan, I'm not,
it's Dr. Ethan.
Dr. Ethan, because I like to make sure that you worked hard for that title, Dr. Ethan. You are illuminating.
Thank you. It's just fantastic. And I like I said, you know, I definitely have a lot of energy, and I love being involved in everything Peoria. I've definitely met so many cool people here. I mean, Sad being one of them. And he's fantastic, and he's so down to earth. And he's an amazing person. He doesn't brag about how cool he is, but he is.
Tell me about it. You never get him on the camera. So what all are you involved in outside of your career and things here in Peoria?
So when I first moved here, one of my co-professors, Heather Ford, she's involved in a group called Big Picture. And they're an art thing. And I said, hey, you know, can I also be involved? And so I met Doug and Eileen, who started that. And they're really nice. I interviewed, had a little chat with them. And the first thing I ever did with them was they were cleaning up a parking lot. And I had said, hey, I'll come at 7 a.m. and we'll clean up, take out all the weeds in this empty parking space. But like I said, my stuff hadn't gotten here yet.
Oh, right. So you had to go get stuff for the cleanup day.
I did it in a dress and heels. I had enough gym stuff. I was like, I'm not going to buy more gym stuff. So I did it. There's a picture out there on Instagram of me in a dress and heels with this weed hoe.
Now, if that doesn't Strong woman. I don't know what do.
I did it in a dress and I did it in my walking heels, so they were smaller, but
still little a dress and heels out there.
It's on there. Mm-hmm. It's out there, and because I'm a person of my word. If I'm going to say I'm going to be somewhere, I'm going to be there. And I was like, I said I'll be there at 7:30. Dress and heels it was, and I did that. I was there for 4 hours, and I helped that. So that was one of the first things, but whenever they need me, I'll help out. And so I said, okay, well, what else can I get involved in? So I looked up, actually, at the chili cook-off, I ran into a gentleman called Andre. I think he works on the city council. Andre's really great, but we had a conversation, and he said, hey, you need to join the Young Professionals of Peoria.
I have to join. This is the third time in today that I've heard about Young Professionals of Peoria. I need to just join.
And they're wonderful. I said, okay. So I went to their website, and I was like, this is, it was a thing where I'm like, your website's a little old, but I went to their first event, and I said, hey, I'd like to learn more. I would like to join. Also, your website needs work. How can I help you? Because I'm not the person that will just complain. I'm like, if something's an issue, I will try to figure out either way I can help you solve that problem or find somebody that will.
Exactly.
And so, then I met them and I started going regularly, become a member. Hopefully, I haven't heard yet, but I might be joining the board of that because, start doing events and things.
Yeah.
And so I've started joining them. And then I talked more so then I met Aaron Gigas and Andrew Wee. And these two are such phenomenal people where they know everyone.
Don't they?
They just know everyone. And I was like, how do you know how? And it's fantastic. But I told them, hey, I look to get involved in the community. Who should I talk to? So they put me in touch with several people. They put me in touch with Jyoti Patel. She does iSteam, and it's iSteam Studios is a company that teaches young kids how to make robots and to program, and it's kind of cool.
In the mall, were they in the mall?
I'm not sure, but I work with her mainly online. But
okay.
I've designed a little syllabus for her for like programming. I was like, here you are. So I'm helping her do that. Other than that, I think there's another friend that Aaron put me in touch with. Her name's Mariama Ford, and she's a visionary.
Yes,
she's wonderful. Like she wants the whole world to come together, and so I have had a talk with her, and I'm helping her build her like website and an app eventually for Peoria entrepreneurs and Peoria companies to come together and have a place that they can all share their work or share any events or where people can go. So I'm working with her on that.
Perfect. I love her.
She's amazing. She's amazing. And she's also got so much good energy and really nice person. Other than that, it's like, so that's about 4 different things, I think. But I auditioned for the Peoria International Choir in January, and I got involved in that. And every Tuesday I have choir practice.
Okay.
Because, I like, those are like, that's a hobby, but it's like, it's a dedication commitment, and I like to sing, and I was like, this is kind of fun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now I have to ask, how did you and Mr. Cedric, the lovely owner of Wildcats and everything housed in here, how did you all connect?
So Cedric I met through, I think it was Young Professionals Peoria that organized Pints and Politics. It was an event that was at Max. That's where I met the mayor. I was so over the moon about that. Mayor, gorgeous, strong Black woman. As a leader, it was just amazing. And so I had a chance to talk to her. And during that talk, Cedric was asking some of the best questions. He was just like, hey, can I ask? And I was like, who's that dude? So I was like, he's asking some really potent, important questions. And I said, okay. So we connected briefly there. We'd had a brief talk. That was also where I met Andrew and Aaron.
Okay.
And so it was just one of those events where I met all these great people. And I was like, okay. And Cedric had given me his card, but we hadn't talked yet. And then I saw him again at the Innovation Talk a couple of weeks after that. And then we talked more, and he was like, and I met his wife, and really wonderful person. I said, this is great. And I was still doing, I mean, I had sprained my ankle at that time and I was in a boot, but I was like, I'm still going out and doing things.
Absolutely.
And, but yeah, it was, and he was like, that's where we had a longer conversation and talked more. And he said, hey, we need to talk more. I said, yeah, okay. And then spring break happened winter break. And I went away for 3 weeks, traveled along the West Coast, went for vacation, but still kept in touch and added me on LinkedIn. And he was like, we need to get you in. I said, okay. Now let's talk more, and that's why I'm here.
Now we are here. That is so amazing. I'm looking forward to just seeing everything you do. Like,
oh, thanks. I'm looking forward to it.
Geez, like 6-month time span.
Yeah.
Of just getting involved and that just goes to show you all, like, I don't even really have to ask her what Peoria life means to her because you just told me everything.
I love it here, and I'll advertise it constantly.
Like 6 months. So what are you all waiting for to make Peoria the best life you can think of?
Mm-hmm.
So you told me about Instagram and you're involved in everything. So I know you have to have an amazing way for people to follow you and see what's going on.
Actually, I don't. Just kind of interesting. Well, at first, Facebook, I'm still old, so Facebook is the one thing that I have. I like telling people I'm old. They don't believe that, and I'm like, no, it's just
I'm like, I am 34. They're like, what? I'm like, no, seriously, I'm 34. Like I'm really 34.
But I actually realize, especially in places like this, word of mouth goes a long way.
Yes, it does.
Because it's a smaller town, and so I have Instagram, but I don't post anything on there, and it's kind of weird. And something that happened in the pandemic for me is I disengaged from my phone. I stopped posting because there was nothing to post.
That is true.
And I kind of like that because that allowed me to be in the moment of whoever I'm with. And it wasn't let me take a picture. I mean, yes, Andrew does a great job of having people follow his food blogs. He's great. But I'm just like, all right, when I meet somebody and I'll take down their information and be like, oh, I think you're really cool. Or, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'll just reach out to them and I'll old school email or reach out to them or text them and say, hey, there's this event coming up. Do you want to come? Do you want to be involved?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to, I'll just reach out to people that way. So no, I don't actually have a following. That's kind of interesting. I've never thought about it that way. I just talk a lot to people.
Well, you just have to come to amazing events and
don't be afraid to say hi if you see me outside.
And I'm convinced no one is going to forget you after this interview because you really have this energy about you. And it's like, wow, like.
Thanks.
Dress and heels.
Yeah, no, there's a picture on Instagram. It was kind of interesting where the the associate dean, she's this wonderful woman, she came up to me and she's like, I saw you on Instagram with the dress and heels. I was like, how did you find that?
So we know it's not be hard. And after this conversation, I am going to definitely be like, don't you want to just come to Peoria Life?
Yes.
I'm going to do the shimmy.
Yes.
Well, hopefully you will be seeing a lot more from Lynette here at Ydcast Studios, home of Peoria Life. I am Naira from the Director's Desk. And until next time, make sure Peoria is a life to live. Bye.
Bye.